Hi guys, so today we're going to go over radical equations. Just keep in mind that the value in a square root, or any even root for that matter, like a fourth root, sixth root, it must be greater than or equal to 0, meaning you can only take the even root of a positive number, which does help when looking for the domain because most of the time the domain or the x values being used in a function are all real numbers except for when you have a rational function or fraction because you can't have a denominator of 0, and when there's a square root because you can only take the positive value for a square root. So since we already know that, the domain of the square root of 3x squared plus 5x plus 2, well, we know that this already needs to be greater than or equal to 0 because otherwise I can't take the square root of that value. So to start off with, when you're dealing with that domain, I am going to just start off by setting it equal to 0 so that I have some marker points that I can work with once I solve for x. Now, factoring is a foundation in this class, so make sure that you know how to factor quadratic functions, whether it's the method that I use or the method you learned otherwise in Algebra 2, it's all going to come out to the same answer. So for the method that I use, I multiply a times c, so I need two numbers that multiply to be 6 and add up to be the middle number, which is 5. So those two numbers are going to be 3 and 2. And then over each number, you always put a and then x. So a is the coefficient of x squared and x. You're going to reduce if possible, which I can. This will give me x over 1. The second fraction can't be reduced, so I'm going to leave it alone. And what I have here are my two parentheses. So x over positive 1 gives me x plus 1. And 3x over positive 2 gives me 3x plus 2. And remember, you can always FOIL or distribute. And if your factoring is correct, it'll bring you right back up to the previous line. So from here, since it's factored, the other side is 0. Zero product property comes in. Set each parentheses equal to 0. And I will get x equals negative 1 and x equals negative 2/3. So most of the time, this is just when you stop, there's your domain, but remember you're dealing with the square root. So what we're going to do is we're going to use these on a number line as I call them marker points. So negative 2 over 3, if you change it into decimal form, it's about negative 0.66667, so we'll just go, like that. So on a number line, these are the two values that would make my square root 0, which can be used. That's perfectly fine. You can take the square root of 0, but now I want to actually just use numbers to the left, middle, and the right of it. So if you pick any number to the left of negative 1, we'll say negative 2. We're going to test it out if it works. So meaning I'm going to just plug it in and see if I get a positive value because I'm taking the square root of it. The nice thing is you can take it here, or you can plug the x into the factored form because they mean the same thing. Just remember that what we're trying to do is see if it comes out positive or negative, and keep in mind I'm taking the square root of it. So if it comes out negative, I can't use it. So I'm actually just going to use the factored form because it looks easier. So instead of x plus 1, I'll write negative 2 plus 1. And instead of 3x plus 2, I'll write negative 6 plus 2. And this gives me negative 1 times negative 4. So this would give me positive 4. So when I'm done, it's a square root of a positive value, which I can use. So that side works. I'm going to pick a number between negative 1 and negative 2/3. Remember, negative 2/3 is about negative 0.6. So we'll say negative 0.75. And again, you're just picking any numbers between, it doesn't have to be a certain value specifically, just a number that ranges between here to here. Um, so again, I'm just going to use the factored form rather than plug it back into the original because they're the same thing. So I'm going to write negative 0.75 plus 1 instead of x plus 1, and 3 times negative 0.75 plus 2. If I plug that into the calculator, I'll get negative 0.25. The first parentheses also gives me, well, positive, negative 0.25, sorry. Positive 0.25. So when I multiply these two, I will get negative 0.0625, which, the decimal's fine. It's negative. So I know that if I were to replace anything in the middle between negative 1 and negative 2, 3 into the value of x, it would give me the square root of a negative. So that's out. Okay, and then from here, pick a number to the right of negative 0.67, which I'm just going to use 0, make life easier. So something here would be x equals to 0. Oh, I meant to change the color. So at x equals 0, I'm going to replace the factored form x values with 0, so that'll give me 0 plus 1, which is 1, and then 3 times 1 plus 2, which is 5, and that ends up as a positive number, so that also works. Which means, how do I write this then? So what this means is that the domain, I can use all the numbers from here to here. That means from negative infinity all the way up to negative 1. Because remember, we can take the square root of a negative value, or sorry, we can take the square root of a 0. So if I plug negative 1 in place of the x, it would give me 0. So that means I would use the numbers from negative infinity up to negative 1, including negative 1, so it's going to be in brackets. And I'm not going to use the values between negative 1 to 2/3, negative 2/3, because that doesn't work. But I can use the values from negative 2 over 3 all the way to infinity. And again, you can include negative 2 over 3. And that's your domain. So it's a little more extensive, yes, but it works. So moving on from here. Let's say you are given a radical function of v, meaning velocity. Sorry, there should be a lowercase v, otherwise it's voltage. V equals square root of 2ha. So h is equal to height, as noted in the problem. The velocity, lowercase v, sorry, that's going to bother me, is velocity, which is given. Equals 75 feet per second. And then the acceleration is due to gravity. So when an object is free falling, the only gravity taking place, or sorry, the only acceleration taking place is gravity, which is a constant 32.1 feet per second squared. I know it says 0.2 on your problem, but I learned it as 0.1, so I'm just going to keep that consistent. Okay, so I mean, this is just like a regular algebra problem where we substitute in the values that we know and see where that takes us. So h we don't know, but we do know that the acceleration is 32.1. Everything works unit-wise, meaning everything is in terms of feet and seconds. So make sure that that correlates. From here, inside of the square root, I can multiply 2 and 32.1 to start off with, and that would give me 64.4, or sorry, 64.2 h. So my goal now is just to get h by itself. 64.2 times h, well, they're stuck in a square root. So to get rid of the square root, we square it. Whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. And then we have 75 squared, which will give us 5,625 equals square and square roots get rid of each other, leaving you with 64.2h. And then from here, isolate h, it's being multiplied to 64.2, so we divide both sides by 64.2. And we have a height of 87.6 feet. So remember, all the units need to match, so make sure that you correlate the units as well. All right, guys, I hope this helps.